This is Betty Holland. My grandmother, according to the Indian records in Okmulgee, Oklahoma, and Muskogee, she was named Josephine Boone, a direct descendant of Dana Boone. There was my mother, Evelina, and my poor mom was 13 when she married Bob Overton. And my mother said that they went to live with his parents because she was pregnant with me. My dad evidently worked sometime, but not a lot. He was a gambler. And she said one day we had food, and the next day we didn't. So we would just go to Mom and Dad's and eat, you know. She said, but he was just the love of her life, and she would never, ever forget him. So here is a 16-year-old girl with 2 children, technically 3, 1 died, living with her mom in a home that somebody just let them live in for nothing, because this was Depression. And I can remember the house. We had the house, but there wasn't furniture to speak of. You know, we slept on mattresses on the floor, and we did have a very hard time, you know, getting through that. Little food, young woman, raising kids. It was very difficult. It's March 23rd, 2003. My name is Betty Kazaroff, and I'm 75 years old. My husband was Jim Kazaroff. I had 2 children, John and Dolly. I'm the grandmother of Jamie and Mark Moreau. I'm the great-grandmother of Jillian, Jimmy, Kyle, and Jake, who I always seem to refer to as Gus. I don't know why, but I do. My stepfather, Millard Holland, and he raised me from the time I was 3 until his death. And he was very good to me. I had a very good stepfather. Melvin was a chef, and we moved to California, and he worked for the Brown Derby, and that was a big restaurant, and he was the head chef, and he was so good. He was such a good cook. People used to come into the restaurant, and they could not speak. They had to use their hands, sign language, and he learned all of the sign language, and he used to talk to all the people, and they used to come there, and they loved to eat there because Melvin waited on them, and they could talk to him. One day, my mother was outside right after we had moved, and she saw this man go down to the taxi cab, get in the cab, and drive away. He wasn't the driver, but he was in the cab. And the lady that lived downstairs met my mother halfway down the block. And she said, "Did you know that man asked where you were living? He was looking for his daughter." That was my father. That's the closest I ever came, and I missed it. When my stepfather married my mother and took me to Oklahoma City, my brother had to stay behind, and he's told me often about how he stood and waved at me as the car drove away because they were taking his little baby. It was World War II. I was 17, and I went to work with my mother in a defense plant. My mother was chief inspector of one of the most important parts of the aircraft. She was so proud of that because she was a head inspector. Then I went to work at the United Artists Theater, and I worked in the box office, and you had to have a real good figure to fit into the uniforms, and thank goodness I did, or I wouldn't have gotten the job. And that is where I met John and Dolly's father. He came to the box office and asked me for a date, and the girl that was taking tickets ran out to the cashier's cage and said, "Do you know who that was?" And I said, "No." She said, "That's Jim Kazaroff." I said, "So?" She said, "Well, he's Armenian and he's rich." The first time I met my father-in-law, I was working in the theater, and we had a long line waiting for seats because we were completely packed. Good movie, I can't remember what it was. And he wanted a loge seat, which those were the soft seats in the back, not down front. Very comfortable. And he said, "Give me one loge." And I said, "I'm sorry, sir, I can't. You see the line? We're full, we're packed." I said, "Give me a loge." He pushed his money at me through the window. And I said, "Sir, I told you we don't have any loge. You have to wait in that line." So he went to the manager, okay? And just luckily, they found one seat for him. But oh, you should have seen the look he gave me. He didn't like me at all. So anyway, a couple of nights later, Jim said, "I want you to meet my parents." So I said, "Fine." But I was scared. And I went over, and his mother was in there alone. So I met her first. And she's so friendly, all smile. I had a very good mother-in-law. Most people would be grateful, most girls would be grateful to have one like mine. Wonderful woman. And then he said, "Here comes my dad." And when he walked in, I thought I was just going to die right there in the seat, because it was that man that was in line that I was mean to because he was so mean to me. And he said, "It's all right. It's okay." Like that. I had a girlfriend, Frances. She was a dancer. She'd been a dancer all her life. She and I danced for the USO in Hollywood. And we danced with the soldiers and stuff, but you couldn't date them. You had to leave them at the door. Sometimes that was tough. We had good times. My husband, his father, and his brother had a hog ranch in Covina before we moved to Hemet. They had 10,000 head of hogs that they had to move out of Los Angeles County. We couldn't find anything in San Bernardino County, but we found this ranch, 106 acres, past Winchester, California, which was about 30 minutes from Hemet. When we moved to Hemet, Neal was the one that was the black and white dog. That was my first dog, Neal. He used to come around the corner of the kitchen when he was a puppy, and he'd slide on the floor, because the tile was slick. So one day, I didn't have a name, like I said, and I went, "Hi, so there you are." And then I got choked when I tried to call him. I went, "Hi, so," because I liked the sound of those two words together. I went, "Hi, so," and he responded to it, so he became Hi, so. The smartest little dog you ever saw. And every one of them could sit up, not just sit up and then fall down again, but they could sit for a long time because I just taught them that way. And then I had Pal, who got hit by a car. Then I got Me Too. I called her Me Too, M-I-T-U. Don't ask me why, I just did. And now Brandon, he's the cutest little thing you ever saw, has a little face like a fox. So Brandon has become our dog. I've had so many dogs. I love dogs. Dolly married a wonderful man named Larry Moreau. He's taken real good care of her. She has a beautiful home. She has everything she wants. And my daughter Dolly is my best friend. She's there for me. She kind of has a replacement now, which I'm sure eases her. It means she's got all these grandchildren. And his name is Victor. And he's the man in my life. We've been together 3 years. He does everything for me, cares for me. He cooks for me. And he's always there, never raising his voice, always with a smile. And he makes me laugh. He is the funniest man I've ever met. Everyone seems to like him. And my mother said before she died, she said, Betty, God has sent you this man, and now it's time for me to go. You and Dolly both know how much I love you. And you've been my whole life. You're everything to me. And I thank God every day. I don't know how I was the lucky one, or we, I should say, with Jim, to get 2 kids. I tell everybody this. You know, my kids aren't perfect, but they're as close to it as you can get. And there's not enough words, but you know it anyway. And as far as my grandkids, I feel the same way. And I love their children. The little ones are fabulous. I mean, Jimmy makes me laugh. And Jake always gives me the hug. And then there's Jillian and Kyle. And they're all very loving children. And they're funny. And they make me happy. When I see them, let's say I've been in a bad mood or I don't feel well, it's really strange. I get well just like that. Because it's their smile, they're the wonderful children. I love them. And I feel the same with Jamie, Mark, Dean, everybody, our whole thing, and Victor.